Welcome to the world's first Straight Talk Solarcast. This is your go-to podcast for answers about solar. Brought to you by Solar Harmonics in Northern California, who invite their customers to own their energy by purchasing a solar panel system for their home, business, or farm. Each episode, we discuss questions facing people making the decision to go solar. The solutions to your questions are given to you straight by one of the leading experts in the solar industry, Jamie Duran, president of Solar Harmonics. Feel free to search our library for answers to questions that you're facing when considering solar. And now, here's Adam Duran, our host with the questions, and Jamie Duran, our solar expert with Straight Talk Solarcast.
Hello, Jamie.
Hello, Adam.
How's everything in the land of solar this week?
This was another gigantic week in the world of solar.
What?
I gotta parse this out because there's, it's the biggest story is that a really large company, solar company called Freedom Forever. They were neither free or forever because they just filed for bankruptcy this week. Mm-hmm. And it looks like they owe more than $500 million to their competitors, and they only have assets, they say, between 100 and 500 million. And based on what I'm seeing, it's way, way less than 100 million. So unfortunately, it looks like a lot of these people you can look up the list of suppliers and who they owe money to, and a lot of them are, solar panel manufacturers and solar distributors, and they didn't even list out all the salespeople they owe money to. But that list is really, really big, and not to mention all the contractors, and because they subcontracted everything. And so that one's a big one, because what that'll mean, well, there's going to be a lot less door knockers in the world, and they were hugely, big believers in door knocking, big believers in solar lease, big believers in the PPA, and so you weren't free to really, choose your own solar project. And then when Freedom Forever, that's the most ironic name in the solar industry. But in any event, that's pretty brutal. And what that'll do, unfortunately, is raise the prices for everyone else, because these companies that gave them credit need to now somehow recover those funds, and probably not going to get them through the bankruptcy court. That's generally when a company files for bankruptcy, they have no more money to do it, so to continue, and they couldn't get any further loans, so they just default. And it's really, really sad. But one funny one was Mosaic Solar. They were a solar financing company that was funded, or one of the biggest investors that is part of the Trump family. And so by defaulting, and this company already went out of business. So it's interesting. They still owe like $100 million to Mosaic funding, which is interesting.
Oh my goodness.
I know. I would love for someone to loan me $100 million. That would be sweet.
You got to pay it back. It's not a.
Oh yeah.
No.
Well, apparently not. Apparently, people just loan hundreds of millions of dollars, and then you just walk away. See ya. No, it's brutal. But they were Freedom Forever. They were considered the second largest solar installer in 2025, and so that's just crazy. That's like if you were in the auto industry, that's. Second biggest would probably be GM just going out of business, or Ford going out of business. It's just amazing to me. And then, they're just blaming the loss of the tax credit on the reason that happened. But the crazy part is that solar leasing was extended in the BBB or the OBBB, and so they were still doing solar leases and still getting the tax credit. So that seems odd, because you would think that they would just go ahead and continue doing that. And it's just really, the tax credit's just not available to individuals anymore, which is a little bit weird. But yeah, that's so Sunrun is now the top company. And apparently they were not interested in buying out Freedom Forever. But that's pretty crazy. It's that Freedom Forever had 6% of the national market share of solar projects in the United States. So
Wow.
Wow. Yeah, big one, big one, big one. And so we're already getting calls from clients who, not our clients, of course, but they went with Freedom Forever and found out wasn't free or forever, and a lot of complaints and service issues and roof leak issues and battery issues. And what do they do now? They've been in the middle of trying to work with Freedom Forever to perform on the warranty, and now the phone just rings and rings and rings. So yeah, we're going to try and help as we can. There's it's just going to, it's not going to be free, and they all expect well, we're a different company, and every solar company is a different company. So if you ask them to service someone else's, that's going to make life not inexpensive. It won't be free. We're dumb. There's no Freedom Solar Company anymore, and we definitely don't make any promises about forever. But it's rough. But they had Freedom Forever had a workforce. They say, according to them, 3,000 employees. So that is ouch. That is really rough. Or at their high point, they had 3,000 employees. So all those people working in solar are now probably what can they do next? They'll do something else, I'm sure. But it's real rough, and I do feel bad for all the employees, and especially of all the creditors that are going to lose out on all their money, or even get 10 cents on the dollar if they get that. So that's pretty rough. So that was the first thing.
Oh no! Can I ask a very quick question?
Yep.
If you went with this company, then I'm assuming they're going to send you some kind of letter that says now your solar payment's still going to go to whatever lender, right? They're not off the hook for paying.
Absolutely. Yeah. The worst thing that people can do is, like, they say, when you lease a car, you're still responsible for the repairs and the maintenance of it. Those, just because, my car got a flat tire doesn't mean I can stop paying the lease payment. And it's the same thing with the solar system, is that if it's a lease system, you still, and say the inverter goes out and it takes them 18 months to replace it, you still have to make the lease payment, and you're paying your full electricity bill. And so, we see so much of the time people are, what kind of inverter, what kind of solar panels, and they almost never ask, how long has that solar installer been in business? And what's
super important.
I think it's the most important, because all of the equipment is pretty good these days. Pretty low failure rate, and solar panels almost never, even the least expensive solar panels, still perform pretty well, and almost no failures compared to the thousands and thousands, if not millions, that are out there. Hundreds of thousands, certainly, of solar panels that are out there. And so really it's who is the best installer, and who takes care of their customers, not just before the sale and during during the installation. Everyone's all excited and everything, but are they around a year from now, or 5 years, or 10 years down the road? Because chances are you're going to need them. And if they're not around, you are in trouble. And then you got to try and find another company. And it turns out a lot of these companies that have popped up that do service abandoned solar companies, they're not much better than the first ones. And so,
oh boy,
because they don't make very much money on the service. It's really like a refrigerator repairman, and you have to have a national organization. You got to build up all the infrastructure. So they're charging, a lot of money to come replace a solar inverter, and it's really rough, because there's not a great solution for that. And so they have to definitely look at, when you're choosing a solar contractor, definitely, like, the most important thing, I think, is their reputation. Do they it's pretty easy to find these days too, and it's really crazy to me that people will sign up for a 25-year, still signing up 25-year solar PPA, power purchase agreement, or a lease from someone who just knocked on their door. You don't know anything about them, but they seem like a nice person. They're working their way through college, and they've been trained on do not take no for an answer, and people are signing up still for these 25-year leases, and they don't even, hey, what's the name of your company? And a lot of times they don't tell them the name of the company until the contract comes. So anywho, it's wow. Yeah. Okay. So Freedom Forever was one of these companies with really, really high pressure, and really, getting people, according to the Texas Attorney General, this is in the article, on April 3rd, so just a few days ago, they were Freedom Forever is one of the major companies that Texas was going to start prosecuting for deceptive and fraudulent practices. So that's
wow.
Yeah. So the Attorney General is coming after you, and virtually every contractor board in say California, they were already planning on suspending their license. And so Freedom Forever lobbied the legislature to kind of make exceptions because they were such a large company. And I didn't really look into that part too much, but it's a big mess. And so I do apologize to people who may have gone with that company, and hopefully you had a good experience with them. It's not all terrible, but if you search up Freedom Forever on Yelp or Google or any contractor or Better Business Bureau, it's some very interesting reading about what was promised, what is delivered, and then the support afterwards. And so if you know someone out there, to our listeners, who is considering going solar, really the best thing you can do is help them get educated, because having something on your roof, on your home, your most important asset for the next 25 years that you don't understand, you really have to trust the installer, the company that's selling it. And, if you don't do your research, you probably are going to get burned, and burn not just a little bit. This could be, tens of thousands of dollars. If there's a roof leak and the company does not stand by it, that's where it gets really bad. And so it's really what people focus on versus what they should be focusing on is really the key to all of this solar stuff. So looking at the tires on a car versus what happens if it breaks down. Who do I call? What do I do? And how am I going to keep this car running is really just almost as important as the car. But you don't live in anyway. So enough about that. That's I wanted to talk about.
Okay,
go ahead.
Uh-oh.
Oh no. Yeah, we're going to save that one for next week. All right. Don't want to. All right, another cliffhanger, Adam. So yeah,
sorry, Jamie.
Because this one, I know there's bad news about Freedom Forever, but it's you kind of have to look at big. This is a really big company, and a lot of times people feel I'm just going to go with the big company because
right.
They are going to be I don't know if the little guy is going to be in business. It's working out that in solar, the little guys are able to survive. And this is what I want to talk about next week is how, we've always said the solar industry is a solar coaster because you have to navigate so many different ups and downs and ins and outs. And now with the 30% tax credit that expired or, was taken away at the end of the year, last year, now solar companies have found a workaround. So I'm going to talk about that next week, and we will leave it there. Thank you, Adam.
All right, Jamie, we're going to wrap it up. Thank you very much for taking a few minutes out of your week to learn a little bit more about solar. Jamie is right. He's proven it week after week that solar is always something going on in this industry. The solar coaster is real. So if you want to ask Jamie a question for an upcoming episode, you can go to our Facebook page, Straight Talk Solarcast. Send us a message through there. If you want to check out a library of our past episodes, you can go to solarharmonics.com, click on the podcast link at the top of the page, and you'll be taken to that searchable library. Finally, if you have a friend considering going solar, this would be an excellent podcast to refer them to because it will save them thousands upon thousands of dollars over the life of their system. And it's weird. I meet people all the time who still don't have solar. So they're out there. I know. Wow. So please introduce them to this podcast, because if they aren't educated about this massive purchase, it will haunt them for the rest of their life. So be a good friend. Refer this podcast. Until next time, everyone. See you.
That's all for now. Thank you for listening to this episode of Straight Talk Solarcast with solar expert Jamie Duran. Join us each week for more answers to your solar questions. Speaking of questions, got some? email us at solarcast@solarharmonics.com, and we'll be sure to give you an answer in an upcoming episode. This episode of Straight Talk Solarcast is brought to you by Solar Harmonics, the leading solar energy developer in Northern California, who invite you to own your energy. Visit them on the web at www.solarharmonics.com.